The original Stalker trilogy was known for its incredible atmosphere, intense scrappy gunfights, emergent gameplay, moments of terror, and a whole heap of bugs. They were games with a lot of heart, but lacking a certain polish. 15 years on from the last installment, Stalker Call of Pripyat, here we are again. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is a game I sorely want to love without the burden of baggage. I grew up playing those originals, but they were games I learned to truly appreciate over the years as the modding community helped patch things up. I suspect that may be the case here too. As a fan of those older games and modding galore, bug-addled Bethesda ROMs, I have a very high tolerance for what we in the biz may refer to as jank. But Stalker 2 is quite different from its predecessors, which makes it a harder pill to swallow. A lot of the original games' storytelling came from written text or basic cutscenes, but everything about those games felt a little rough around the edges. Stalker 2 in contrast is a very cinematic game with some incredible performances, but it doesn't quite nail the landing when I'm having a conversation about the mysteries of the zone with a Walkman and a floating pair of headphones while the character is standing just there. It's a real shame, as protagonist Skiff is a man who the zone has reached out and found, and someone I am deeply rooting for. My time with the hands-on preview was a far smoother affair as well, so I went into this with really high hopes. But in that preview video, I made a point of highlighting just how tumultuous the development of Stalker 2 has been for GSC Game World. I cannot fathom making a game in such circumstances. I can't empathise with the developers enough, but Stalker 2 has unfortunately not come out the other side unscathed. Whilst GSC Game World has taken the same recipe and ingredients of those older games, the ones that made them great, and updated them where necessary, like those games, Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl simply needs more time in the oven. There is a truly great game underneath, and I found myself enjoying it more and more as I went along. It is intrinsically and unmistakably Stalker, including the bugs. As a long-time fan, it was surprisingly disorientating. The mechanics and gameplay are essentially the same, but it's now a full open world, and at times quite beautiful thanks to being powered by Unreal Engine 5, though this is not without its drawbacks either. More on that in a bit. Revisiting locations from the originals is quite a bizarre experience, as is meeting and interacting with characters you may have come across in them too. And this is all done in a way that doesn't feel cheap or just for the sake of fan service either. They are introduced in a manner that makes sense. Skiff is on his way to becoming a legend of the zone himself, so it makes sense he would brush shoulders with those who came before him too. Hunting for artifacts is still as much of a joy as it was back in 2007, and the relief of surviving all and returning to safety is palpable. Gunfights are more intense than ever, with AI taking cover, being liberal with grenade tosses and pushing forward to flush you out. Weapons sound punchy and hefty, and controlling them requires skill. Your guns will wear down too, and there's nothing quite like a gun jamming to get your heart rate up as a bloodsucker's trying to tear your face off, though they do break down a bit more often than I'd like. The audio design too is absolutely superb. The zone creaks and groans as it protests your very presence. Emissions crash and thunder, mutants roar, anomalies sound as otherworldly as they look. I briefly touched on it before, but Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is full of wonderful characters I deeply care for, and those I loathe, in a good way. The Ukrainian voice acting in particular is superb, but some of the magic is lost in the English dub. There is a certain fatalism found amongst the inhabitants of the zone. It's a hard thing to convey. Ukrainians as a people have endured much over the centuries, be it grueling life under the Tsars, the Holodomor, Nazi occupation and extermination, the Chernobyl disaster, Soviet rule, or the ongoing Russian invasion of Ukraine. Untold millions have suffered and died. Many of those who lived through those times are still with us, with the effects of those events still felt to this day. This fatalism is not so much an acceptance of one's fate or giving up, but rather the ability to live alongside the horrors without succumbing to them, and it's what allows the characters of the zone to feel real. You can hear it in everyone's voice. Strider, the former leader of the quasi-religious Monolith faction, puts it best. Some things are more important than happiness. Switching between languages, this has not been articulated as well by the English-speaking actors who do not have the shared culture and lived experience to draw upon. It is why representation in the arts is so important. Some stories are best told by those who lived it. If you are able and subtitles are not a barrier to entry, I would highly recommend you opt for the Ukrainian language option. And compounding what made the world feel real in those original games was a sense of dynamism driven by a system known as A-Life, which allowed NPCs, be they humans or mutants, to go about their lives independent of the player. It is a shame then that in Stalker 2, A-Life 2 works against the fantastic world building and characters, as the denizens of the zone appear to enact bizarre suicide rituals where they agree to kill each other in a small circle so that they may offer you up a huge amount of loot. I came across these macabre scenes so frequently that it almost became comical. It was that, or a bunch of bandits, mutants or soldiers spawning right where you just were and you suddenly have a HUD element telling you you're being spotted by them. It feels a bit forced or cheap. Bodies can flail around too, and NPCs have been stuck in T-poses or halfway in the ground. I only experienced one hard crash in my playthrough, and stability seemed to improve over the course of the review period with a day zero patch inbound, but time will tell. In some ways, Stalker 2 at times is the inverse of those original games. Its story, performances and cutscenes are the real standouts, when they work, but the moment-to-moment gameplay can be what lets it down. The aforementioned Unreal Engine 5 allows for some truly impressive vistas. Lumen is used to great effect as well to improve the dynamism of the world, making underground facilities and caves feel truly pitch black at times and the day-night cycle feel natural. But many of these effects are constructed using temporal techniques where information from prior frames is used to inform how the lighting should look, and being software Lumen, there are inherent inaccuracies that produce a final result that is grainy and often blurry. Running the game on a Razer Blade 17 laptop equipped with an Intel i9-12900H, Nvidia RTX 3080 Ti with 16GB of VRAM and 32GB of system memory, I had to rely heavily on Nvidia DLSS to get acceptable frame rates, and this compounded the blurriness, as it means Lumen samples from an even lower base resolution, making it harder to see enemies and already difficult to spot anomalies. On a more positive note, upon launch on PC, the game will pre-compile shaders, which goes a long way to eliminating stutters. In my interview with technical producer Evgeny Kulik, they spoke at great length about the work that they had done to get Unreal Engine 5 to behave in such a big open world. This has largely been a success, but you need a beastly machine to run Stalker 2 and get a clean image. Ultimately, reviews are exercises in subjectivity with a certain level of objectivity, and here I'm going to lean heavily into the former. Despite all the bugs, A-Life 2 being goofy or performance woes, the zone drew me in like few other worlds can. I wanted to keep playing. I was so invested in the story, the characters and the fate of the zone that I kept pressing on. Early on during my time with the game, I already made big decisions that I couldn't stop thinking about who I would side with, stab in the back, betray or forsake or save in my next playthrough to see where my actions take me. The promise of mods is ever alluring too, and if the developers can deliver on this front, Stalker 2 will have a long tail for years to come. If you're unsure, Stalker 2 is on Xbox Game Pass, making trying it out a fairly low risk investment, but for those who have pre-ordered, depending on how much the Day Zero patch fixes things, you might feel a bit hard done by. Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl could be an incredible game given time, if GSC Game World can hammer it into shape. Right now, it's at times a great one with flashes of brilliance, but is let down by technical mishaps brought about by the most unfortunate of circumstances. Currently, I don't know what ending Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl is headed towards. The path to release has been long, arduous, endlessly difficult, but the road stretches out before GSC Game World yet. But as such, Radio Times are awarding Stalker 2 Heart of Chernobyl with 4 out of 5 stars. What's here is so incredibly impressive already. It's just those bugs and technical woes that is stopping me from giving that full 5 stars. The fact that the game here is a miracle in of itself, and there really isn't something quite like it. If you have the cash to spare, or you want to try it on Xbox Game Pass, I really highly implore you to do, but I would recommend you to maybe wait just a little bit longer. I've been Cole for Radio Times Gaming. Thank you for watching, we hope you enjoyed this. Make sure to subscribe to the Radio Times Gaming YouTube channel. I'll see you out there in the zone.